Okay, moving on to the next item, which has to do with the clearing of the oleander bushes from the Caltrans right-of-way. Staff report, please.
Thank you. This item was requested to return. Sorry, I'm having a hard time with my page. Information was requested by council at its April 25th meeting to return with the cost of equipment used by staff to clear the oleanders at the Caltrans right-of-way. The cost of labor, including overhead for the employees who perform the work, was $3,431. Council, again, questioned the cost of equipment used by staff. Staff did not rent any equipment for this project, but used equipment that the city owns. We do not have established rates for equipment rental, so staff used industry standard rental rates to determine the equivalent rental rate of equipment, which totaled $3,549.64. The balance due for the cost of labor was $431.66. So the city has amended its invoice to Diamond Hills for an amended balance due of $3,981.30, which has been sent and due within 30 days from the date on the invoice. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Well, before we open up to questions, I have been in contact with our city attorney regarding, because somebody was considering this a gift of public funds, which is not acceptable, obviously. So I asked him if this particular issue was, in fact, in his opinion, a gift of public funds. And with your permission, I'll read your response. I don't believe that the work performed by the city constitutes a gift of public funds for a couple of reasons. First, Diamond Hills reimburses the city for the majority of the cost except for rental fees. Second, and more importantly, there is a significant public benefit in the sales tax increase that will inure to the city by virtue of the increased visibility of Diamond Hills. It is not uncommon for cities trim trees for this reason. As you know, we give Diamond Hills significantly more money in the form of a tax rebate. No court would find that to be a gift as a city receives public benefit. Courts recognize that public agencies have broad discretion to identify a public purpose in the context of the gift of public funds doctrine. Unless the city's determination is unreasonable, courts will uphold its decision. During the course of accomplishing its public purpose, the city can also incidentally benefit private entities. This incidental benefit is not constitutionally impermissible. In sum, I don't believe that a court would find the city's decision to trim the bushes to constitute a gift of public funds.
And Mayor Moore, I would add now that upon review of the staff report, which I didn't have the benefit of at the time I wrote that, it appears that Diamond Hills has reimbursed the entire amount. So,
Okay. So, any discussion from the council?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
All right, before we get to the gift of public funds, we'll go to the page 300 and a description of the payback. And it shows that a chipper at $37.85 an hour, a front end loader at $66 an hour, and unit 622, $25, unit 602, $25. Can you tell me what type of vehicle these vehicles are?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering myself.
Councilmember Peterson, I apologize, but I cannot tell you what those units are because I don't have the list in front of me, but I would assume that those are work trucks. I mean, one of them might be I remember seeing a dump truck out there, so I'm sure one of them is a dump truck, but I'm pretty sure the others are just work trucks.
So my point is that Rochelle said that we got industry rental rates. And how many different industry rental rate places, i.e. United Rentals, ABC Rentals, Able Rentals, whomever, did we contact in order to get these figures?
Yeah, that I do not know. Yeah.
I'd have to do research on exactly who pulled all of these numbers to get the industry standards. So
So somebody just picked the numbers and threw them there? Because I don't know how you can pick a number for an hourly rate on Unit 602. I mean, what is the comparison to Unit 602 and an hourly rate? So this whole thing is unacceptable. This needs to have an itemized list of each vehicle, of what it is, you know, so we can determine what the hourly rate is. And then, through the industry standards, you need to call, you know, United Rental or somebody and find out what a 620i case loader rents for, you know, or what the chipper rents for, or what a 5-ton dump truck rents for. Nobody can determine what this is. So this is an unacceptable rental rate.
And just to add, I think, you know, and some of these vehicles, it's going to be difficult to do. And I say that because if we have a 1998 top kick dump truck, you know, you're not going to be able to go out and rent one of those. They don't.
Well, I don't think, Art, that it's a 1998 dump truck. I think it's a 5-ton dump truck. What's doesn't matter if it's a 1998, a 2008, or a 2018. If it's a 5-ton dump truck and it's hauling that trash to the dump, it's a 5-ton dump truck. Doesn't matter the year. It's just, what's a 5-ton dump truck renting for? And it's the same way with the loader. Year doesn't matter. You know, what's the loader worth? But I think this is not an acceptable itemized list of rental rates, and then there's no comparison. And you should at least provide us with at least 2 or 3 rental yards rates.
I don't know if I totally disagree with that last statement. You know, if when we're doing an engineer's estimate for a job, and we know that we charge ourselves $37.25 to use the chipper, then, and if we're using all of our own equipment, then to me, that's satisfactory. If that's what we're charging ourselves, then that's the rental rate, okay? If you go to a rental yard, they might charge $50 for well, we're charging ourselves $37 because we own it. But I like you, I would have liked to have known, you know, what Unit 622 was.
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah.
again, how much staff time are we going to take up? They paid the bill.
Well, let me finish with my question.
All right, go ahead.
So you'll get that information, Rochelle,
yes,
or somebody will, and come back with what these units are and at least 2 estimates from 2 rental yards.
yes, if that's the wish
Now,
of council. Yes.
since the date of the brush clearing, have you had any further conversation with Caltrans, either written, telephonic, email?
Since the clearing, no, I don't believe I have. No.
No? Because in the press enterprise, it was written that they were going to investigate what occurred, and that had they known what was being done with the permit, that they would not have issued the permit.
Yeah, you know, I read that too, and that was kind of a little hard to read, only because we were pretty clear on what we were going to do, what the scope was going to include. During the pre-construction meeting with the Caltrans representative, prior to going out there and doing that work, we clearly explained to him exactly what we were going to do. And so, yeah, when I read that, I was a little confused.
On your first one, when you went in and you said you were going to remove the oleanders, then they came back and they said, well, then you need to do soil sampling, erosion testing.
Yeah.
And I thought, boy, what a can of worms you opened, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what you said,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
what did I do?
You're right about
So
that.
you went back in and then you said you were going to trim. You never said anything about removal, and you still removed. And when they came back with you, they said that you were to trim according to the ANSI A300 trimming regulations.
Or to the approval of the Caltrans representative.
Correct. So did he go out there and show you? Because in ANSI 300, section 2.3.1 said when you trim a tree, an arborist or an arborist trainee must be on site. So did you have an arborist or an
No.
arborist trainee?
We did not have one, but the Caltrans representative that was part of our pre-construction meeting, he was out there several times. I believe there was a second inspector that showed up, and so they were out there throughout the process, and so there was nothing
Because
that
those
was
trees are
done.
killed, they're dead, they ain't coming back.
And again, they were out there, and I've done many projects with Caltrans, and when they see something that they don't like, they do not hesitate to shut you down. And so they were out there during the process, and, you know, we didn't get any write-ups, we didn't get any expressed concerns from the Caltrans, and so we continued forward.
Because it's clear, the city obtained a fee-exempt permit from Caltrans to do landscape maintenance on the freeway right-of-way by Diamond Hills. Such a permit typically is for weed abatement or to trim dead, stressed tree branches for safety and aesthetic reasons, says Joy Schneider, the Caltrans PIO. She also noted such a permit is not for trimming trees for visibility purposes to benefit private business and billboard companies. So somewhere along here, somebody issued the permit mistakenly, perhaps? Because then it also says Caltrans District 8 Chief of Public and Media Affairs wrote in an email Thursday that the permit would not have been approved under the visibility parameters. Caltrans will investigate the work that was completed and investigate the purpose of the permit. So this is why I was wondering, you haven't heard anything yet?
I haven't heard anything yet.
So then the second thing is, and then it's unfortunate that Michael's not here. So we're going to have to depend on you, Rochelle, and then on John Cotty for the answers. So what legal authority does the city manager have under our municipal code and city ordinances to rent, loan, or give city employees and equipment to work for a private business?
He would not have authority to give equipment to a private business. He can apply for, in this case, there was a permit that was applied for through Caltrans at the request of a business owner to use our crews. It was fully reimbursed work, so that it would fall with, I don't see any legal impediment to the work being done. Whether it was done in compliance with Caltrans standards, I can't speak to. I suspect we might get a letter from Caltrans here in the near future. We'll deal with that if it comes, but
Okay, so was there a written contract or agreement before the start of the work?
I have prepared no such agreement, and I haven't seen one.
Was there an agreed upon price for the labor and the cost of the equipment prior to the start of work?
Not to my knowledge, the calculation of how much labor went into it was not done until the completion of the work. So there wasn't a cost estimate based on not knowing the amount of labor that it would take.
This is where it kind of becomes convoluted. So there was no written contract or agreement, and there was no predetermined itemized fees for the services and equipment. And this act had to be a gift of public funds. The employees and equipment were furnished without a contract and without a negotiated price. All billings were after the fact, and the city manager displayed resistance when mentioning the rental rates of the equipment. Now here's a case point, an example here, John. If a person walks into a store and steals a loaf of bread, and walks out of the store, and then he decides to return the loaf of bread and apologize for the act, is there still a theft? Absolutely. And the intent was to deprive the owner of the bread, and a change of heart doesn't erase the crime. So here what we have is the same thing.
No, you don't.
Let me finish, George.
But you don't.
And then
Go ahead.
let me finish.
Go ahead.
So what we have is somebody that entered into a verbal agreement which was against the 2015-2016 grand jury report where they said that the city is to cease and desist immediately with the backdoor golden handshake deals. The city replied in writing, and I think you wrote the response, that said we will comply with the grand jury, and we agree. At least Art signed it because he was the mayor. So with that, it goes now that we've entered into a golden handshake deal. We've given away employees. We didn't determine what we were going to charge. And so now here we are. Because the act was observed, investigated, and reported by local citizens and the media, the city manager realized that the gift of public funds had been discovered. It was then and only then that he decided to invoice the dealership for the labor cost only. Labor cost only. However, when confronted with the rental cost of the city's equipment, the city manager argued the billing of the equipment, stating that the city owns the equipment and it's old. You remember that, and it's on tape. It was at the last meeting. With that, I want to read, and this I know you're familiar with. Section 8314 of the Government Code. It is unlawful for any elected state or local officer, including any state or local appointee, employee, or consultant, to use or permit others to use public resources for a campaign activity or personnel or other purposes which are not authorized by law. Public resources means any property or asset owned by the state or any local agency, including but not limited to land, building, facilities, funds, equipment, supplies, telephones, computers, vehicles, travel, and state compensated time. Use means a use of public resources which is substantial enough to result in a gain or advantage to the user or a loss to the state or any local agency for which a monetary value may be estimated. Any person who intentionally or negligently violates this section is liable for a civil penalty, and then it goes on and on and on, not to exceed $1,000 for each day on which the violation occurs, plus 3 times the value of the unlawful use of public resources. So if there was not a written agreement, there was not a predetermined set of fees, nothing was done in advance. He argues the point of recouping money for the use of rental equipment. How do you explain that the person now wants to return the loaf of bread?
The section you cited, I believe, deals with use of public funds for campaign activities.
No. Let me read it again. Campaign activities or personal or other purposes which are not authorized by law. This is the use to gifting of public funds.
The law prohibits the use of public funds for private purposes.
Correct.
A court would analyze that by looking at the public benefit conferred and looking at the private benefit gained. In this situation, and I would note also that there can be an incidental benefit to a private entity. In this situation, the amount of money involved, the amount of tax benefit that is conferred pursuant to agreements between us and Diamond Hills, which far exceed the $7,000 at issue here.
The Diamond Hills is tax subsidized by the taxpayer anyway. They're subsidized. We're kicking back half of our sales tax. So you can say that it's a subsidized dealership by the taxpayer in the city.
That's right, and the benefit that is conferred is that that's driving sales tax.
Okay, so
By
the
giving them
taxpayer now is going to do the cleaning as well?
No, the point is that we give them, a private company, a substantial sales tax benefit that far exceeds $7,000. Why isn't that a gift of public funds? It's not a gift of public funds because there's a substantial
Because that's a legal way
public,
of doing things.
it's a, well, I can,
That
it's
was a
you're right.
negotiate, but it was a
You're right.
negotiated
You're 100% right.
in a
But
resolution.
but we're talking about a gift of public funds. So the analysis turns on whether or not there is a substantial public benefit. And if there's a substantial public benefit in the fact that we're getting sales tax increases by virtue of the fact that we have this tax sharing agreement, there is arguably a lack of a gift of public funds by virtue of the fact that there is increased visibility and therefore increased sales tax at the dealership.
So that would be your defense.
It's not my defense, it's state law. I'm just telling you how a court might
No,
view
what you're doing
the gift
is-
of public funds. I'm not defending him, I'm just saying that that's how a
He's giving
court
his legal
would
opinion.
analyze the issue.
Okay, so would this be your legal opinion? For the record, your legal opinion?
My legal opinion is that a court would likely not view this, especially in light of the fact that it has been reimbursed, at least through the numbers that I've seen, would likely not find this a constitutionally impermissible gift of public funds.
So it's okay,
No,
let's say the public wouldn't have noticed, nobody found out, Gail didn't write a story, Banning Informer didn't write a story, nobody made phone calls, took pictures and sent them out, and everybody was going nuts, and this thing slid through. Since there was no contract, no agreement, no invoices, no nothing, except a council member being an intermediary in negotiating the deal, and Michael Rock instrumenting the deal, or actually making it happen, do you think, would a reasonable person think that the city and the taxpayer was going to be reimbursed, or was this just going to be swept under the table? I think that's the question.
And that's a separate issue from the gift of public funds analysis. Arguably, whether they paid for this or not, a court could find that there wasn't a gift of public funds, even if Diamond Hills didn't reimburse us $1, if an analysis was performed that there was a substantial public benefit gained by virtue of this. Now, whether or not there's a violation of the purchasing ordinance or the contract code, I didn't look at that. You asked me about the gift of public funds issue. I don't believe there's a gift of public funds, and I don't believe the court would find a gift of public funds. You know, from what
So
I've,
then is
from
there
the
a
information,
violation here?
well, from the information I've seen, I don't see a violation of the contracts code.
From the information that I just gave, is there a violation?
Well, what the information you gave isn't is the information. If Michael secreted some contract, arguably there might be a violation, but I don't have any information before me that occurred. The information I have
But you don't
is
have
that
a contract.
it could be done by purchase order. It
Okay,
doesn't
hang
have
on.
to be a contract.
It's not
request.
unusual in something like this to do a job on time and material, which
So
is
how do we
exactly, wait a
get-
minute.
Yeah, but it
I've
still
I've
would
been
have been an
listening to you for
agreement.
20 minutes, hang on. It's not unusual for a community or a business to do a job like this on time and material, and that's exactly what he did. Now, was he wrong? In my opinion, I agreed with you totally in not charging for the equipment. Absolutely. He was wrong. And he was wrong when he sat here and said it was all included in the rates. I totally agree. But as far as him doing a job on time and material, that's a common practice.
So did you know about this, Mayor? Did you know about this deal?
I had no idea till Frank Burgess called me.
Okay, so what about you, Debbie? Did you know about this deal?
I don't know about a lot of things that are done every single day by the city because I expect the city staff to run the city. I do not expect them to ask me or the rest of the council for them to
So
do
then
what is going to
then
help
this was a
with the
deal
city.
that only Art Welch and the city manager knew. And Art Welch made the statement earlier that, let me get it out here so I don't misquote it. Did we go around the idea of bringing it to council? Probably. So it was a backdoor deal, no matter how you look at it. It was never brought to council. There was never an agreement. There was never an invoice. There was nothing until after the fact, till it came to light, and then all of a sudden, people started scurrying to try to right the ship because it was leaving.
Here's what I'm going to suggest. The city attorney has already told us, in his opinion, it is not a gift of public funds. He did not have anything in front of him talking about a contract violation or anything like that. I would suggest that you put your information together, give it to him, and let him come back to us and tell us whether there's any kind of violation of contract law or whatever.
Can you write, can the city attorney write the attorney general and get an opinion?
If that is the collective concurrence of the council, I'd be happy to do that.
I'd like to make a motion that the city attorney prepare an investigative report, send it to the attorney general for an opinion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? That dies for lack of a second.
So, once again, we're just going to kill the transparency, you know?
No.
We'll kill the transparency.
That's not what I said. I said if you want to give him the information you have and get a legal opinion on him, whether there's a violation of contract law, go ahead and do it.
All right, then in this case, as a citizen, I'll file a complaint with our police department. And we'll have the police department investigate it, and if they want to kick it over to the district attorney's office, then that's their choice.
That's fine. Okay, so have we, do you want to say something, or should we just move on?
There's two reasons why I've just sat here and listened to all of this. One is that the reporter's sitting out here to record again tonight. The second thing is I am just totally confused. Totally confused. I got asked a question by one of our businesses in town about clearing vegetation that's not on his property, it's on Caltrans property. And I said, I don't know. I'll find out. So what I did was I asked a state office, the one I work for, how do we do this? That's where it went first. Well, you got to deal with Caltrans, and the business needs to apply. In an effort to do that, they were turned down. Caltrans does not, just like they said in the PIO said for Caltrans, do not give permits for private business to cut vegetation on Caltrans property. But they would do it when they got around to it. Well, in view of Caltrans and how busy and how much territory District 8 covers, that could be a long time. So I came to the city, to Art and to Michael, and asked if there was a way we could help them get a permit. When we tried to do that, the permit was issued to the city of Banning. The city of Banning, and by the way, and I think this can, maybe you don't have this part of it, Don. By the way, there is communication from Diamond Hills prior to all of this happening saying, we'll cover the cost of this if we can get it done. Now that was prior to and there was, other than that, I don't think there was any written
Art,
agreement.
did you?
Hold on just a minute. I didn't interrupt you.
I'm sorry.
So, trying to be a good public servant and service our businesses here in town, you get hit on the head with an accusation where there was no intent to ever use public funds to get the job done. Now, the accusations can be long and hard and heavy. We're talking about, I think, a very acceptable, although not understandable by all, a very acceptable use of our manpower and our equipment if it's paid for. And that's exactly what happened. Now, John made a comment about what the worth of all of this is. And I happen to know this because it is fact. Not because the oleanders were cut, but because this business really means to be something in the city of Banning. In 9 months, their business has increased 35%.
Art, this is not
Hold on,
about business.
hold on just a minute.
We don't care about this. It's not about the
I know,
business.
we keep saying we don't care about our business or we're not making
It's not about the
accusations.
business. It's about the underhanded way that this whole shenanigan.
There was nothing intended to be underhanded,
May not have been intended.
not
but
at
it
all.
was.
Well, maybe, there's been a lot of accusations in the past too that aren't absolutely true. But there was no intent here at all. And the total cost of this operation, whether we go back and get factual rental rates, that's okay too with them, and bill them for it, they'll pay for it. So there wasn't one tax dollar spent on this endeavor at all.
All right, when you said that the permit, they applied for the permit, and behold, it came back made out to the city of Banning. If you look in your packet, that the entire application for the encroachment permit is there, and the encroachment permit was made and filed by Art Villa.
No, hold on. Now see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. They called and asked if they could apply for a permit, and were told, no, not a private business to do that. That's when they asked if they could get some help through the city to apply. And that's when the permit was issued to the city of Banning. Now, let's keep the events and what really the intention was here straight.
We have a resident who would like to address us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name's Don Smith. I think the important part of discovering a problem is coming up with a solution so that the problems don't happen over and over again, because history repeats itself. Now, I'm a little surprised, because I've rented out government workers before, and they tell you what the rate's going to be per hour, including the overhead. And at least I know when I hire out the Riverside County sheriffs, I assume the Banning Police Department too, it's been a while since I've hired them, they tell you what the rate is per hour, which isn't remotely what the police officer gets, because it has to include the cost of his supervisor and his support staff and his equipment. And so they come up with a price that includes all those things. So when I was told we had billed our overhead, I had assumed that our overhead charge, apparently it's incorrect, but I assumed that our overhead charge included the cost of the equipment used, like it has in other governmented agencies when I use their employees to provide services, which they even charge over the government agencies because of the budgeting issues. See, I don't know what our overhead charge includes or how our overhead charge was calculated. But we need to have an overhead charge so that the next time somebody says we need to use whatever, I'm going to pick the police department because it's the most common one that people want to have police present at events, or sometimes we require them to hire police to be at the events. We have to make sure that we understand what our overhead rate is. How is it calculated, and does it in fact include the cost of supplies and the wear and tear on equipment? Because if we would have had that policy and procedure in place, we would have known like in 3 seconds how much this really cost, and if we develop that procedure and policy, this won't happen again. Thank you.
No, it was obvious when we looked at it the last time, when I see that we've got a $40, the highest person we have out here is $42. We were not charging for the equipment along with that. I mean, that was obvious, and that's where Don and I did agree. But
On the, there's also going to be future billing. When you look at the encroachment permit, and although it says fee paid exempt, deposit exempt, when you drop on down to about 2/3 of the page down, it says in addition to the fee, the permittee will be billed actual cost for field work. I don't know what field work is or when it's coming in, but I would assume that there's going to be another bill coming in for field work.
okay.
It's on page 302.
Okay, so this is a discussion item only. We beat it to death. You've already told us what you're going to do.
Well, no, I still want to ask, so if the council doesn't want transparency and clarity and a legal opinion from the Attorney General, then how do we go about, where's the next step? So they don't want you to write it. Obviously, they're trying to suppress it. They want no part of it. So where do we go next?
Who said suppress it?
Well, you don't want to agree to it,
No, we don't want to go to the Attorney General. We have a city attorney that we
but the
pay
city
money for.
attorney can't do it.
He can give you a legal opinion
No.
if you want to give him your facts. He
I
said
want
he
the
doesn't have
attorney
any
to- I
facts.
want the Attorney General's opinion.
Mayor?
So where do we go?
Mayor, I think that we had a good suggestion come from the audience. Mr. Smith suggested we consider a policy, and I think that as we're talking about our purchasing policy, that this might be something to be able to add. When you're talking about where we're going with this, I look at not only the time that was spent on the actual event, but how much staff time has been spent since then. And since there is no benefit of public funds, we can go around on this for the next number of days if you want to. But I think that if you can get the council to concur, at least for the majority, as to let's look at our purchasing policy and let this thing be put to bed.
Totally agree.
Can I just add a little more information? It would actually be included in the cost allocation plan that's existing, currently underway under Wildan. The overhead charge, it does include many factors, including, the current study, I wasn't here when the previous study was done, but the current study includes the cost of equipment, the cost of the square footage of a building that the employee works in that's being, that hourly wage is being calculated. All of those factors are built in. I broke down on this last version that the hourly rate to the employee was $24.55. The overhead added on top of that was $15.67, which is well over 50%. So that's above and beyond just benefits. There are other factors built in to this overhead charge. So that was included. It is a current policy. It's currently being updated, and that will be brought back to council. It will be within the next few months. We actually have a final meeting with all directors tomorrow and Wildan to go over the final cost allocation plan, which is our overhead, our indirect overhead charge that will be hopefully adopted soon. It will be, the study will be completed within the next few months.
Well, I was told by Mr. Rock we'd have it next month.
There are several
We've been
pieces
waiting
to
on it
this.
for 2 years, so.
Well, the cost allocation portion of it, there's 3 parts to the study. Cost allocation plan, like I said, is complete. We're doing the final run through it with directors tomorrow. That is complete. We planned on bringing it all back together. The next piece is the full master fee study, which they would not start until the cost allocation portion was done. They needed that first before they go into the fee study.
I was told the cost allocation plan would be brought to us in June.
No, it's not gonna be.
We can bring that separately, but I didn't realize that was said to you, but we can bring it separately with Wildan instead of all together.
Anyway,
Okay, and Mayor, the one thing I forgot to add
I
was
still
if
never
there-
finished, and I keep getting cut off.
Well, did you have the floor?
Yeah, I've had it, I don't know how long, I never gave it up.
Well,
But since you're talking, I'd like to ask you one thing, Debbie. I want to play something for you.
to what happened in this particular instance, but I will say that I did talk to the district director for Caltrans about this and ask him to look into it, which he said he was. He did say this is something that cities do all the time. This is not unusual, and that they actually encourage cities to take care of anything that could present a hazard to the local residents or travelers on the freeway.
Who's that you talked to, Debbie? Give me his name.
His name is Ryan let me get his name and be sure. I'll check it. And
Yeah,
make
give
sure
me his
he's
name
right.
and number, because I'd like to call and talk to him. You said you talked to him, and that's what he said, that Caltrans is encouraging, because I'm seeing in the newspaper that Caltrans is discouraging people from going out on their highways, and Caltrans gets very... Well, anyway, I was wondering, all week long, I've tried to, for the last 2 weeks, get you to give me a name. Did we ever come up with a name?
No, we didn't, and I will tell you, after you've put such a big stick up about it, I'm not even looking for
I
his
don't
name.
think you ever talked to anybody, Debbie.
You know, you can
You owe the
believe
people
what
that
you
all right,
want.
that's off the point.
It doesn't have anything to do with fact.
That's off the point. We've gotten a report.
I'd like to ask one more thing for the staff.
Go-
Just briefly. If there are any more costs, that we will make sure that they are billed directly to Diamond Hills. Anything that we haven't come up with.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor? Mayor,
Sorry? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I do have a letter to read.
Oh,
from-
yeah, I forgot. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is from Ed Miller. It's regarding the invoice to Diamond Hills. The deputy city manager's bland presentation of monies owed to the city by Diamond Hills for services rendered is simply a smokescreen hiding the fact that this use of government personnel and equipment to aid a private business is a violation of every principle of our city's government, or for that matter, I believe the state and federal government's principles. Our city municipal code does not list any legal means for our city's employees or equipment to be loaned or rented to private businesses. There is nothing in our municipal code that permits overtime work for private businesses by our employees while on our payroll. There is nothing in our municipal code that permits our city manager to apply for permits from other government agencies without correctly specifying the purpose of those permits. But that is exactly what happened. The Press Enterprise reported that the city manager applied for a permit for landscape maintenance from Caltrans. Such a permit is primarily for weed abatement, but the manager admitted his aim was really to improve visibility for Diamond Hills business sign. This misrepresentation is likely to damage the relationship of our city and Caltrans, as Caltrans was quoted in the article as saying that they were investigating the purpose of the permit. Furthermore, it opens the city up to demands from other businesses for equivalent usage of city resources and opens the city to possible lawsuits from other businesses. If Councilmember Welch had asked that the tree trimming be done, he certainly should have known better after his years on council and years working with Senator Morrell. Furthermore, it certainly was the responsibility of the city manager to point out the impropriety of such a request. This is another example of the lack of care and the lack of consideration of the ethics in administrative actions. I ask again, does the council just ignore unacceptable behavior and think it does not reflect on the council's own ethics? As I said before, of course it does. The question again is, does ethics matter to you? Thank you.
Okay. The item was for a receive and file a report only.